Bright and early Sunday morning, Callum and Louise have travelled from their marina back to Mercia to give myself, Jane, John and Deb a hand move our 3 boats as part of our 6th monthly boat move around here at Mercia. Without their help, it would have been very, very difficult. With the stern and bow ropes removed, it's now time for me to sail this boat out, and I must admit it is a bit scary, but whilst I've been waiting for John to move his narrowboat, the wind's picked up a little bit, and although I was originally going to turn to my left, the breeze is going to take freedom to my right, so I decided, along with Callum, that I'd go to the right and I'd do a turnaround in a bit of open water that we've got here. So let's see how I get on.
Take it down, bring it down in the circle.
Yeah.
See, no, it's not going fast, it seems like it's going fast to me. I'm happy with that. I also want to see what happens when you try and reverse it back in there. Is that what I'm going to try and do, or sort of see not spin all the way around, will it?
Yeah, it should do. Shows you've got a better turning circle.
Go back. Pass this out and then reverse.
going out with your turning.
Keep doing that, it's like a trap behind that thing there.
That's very good again. Right. Knock over. Mine's doing that. As soon as you get near Louise, as soon as you get near Louise, start to do it. Right, stop.
Right, take it out. That's it.
Can you push his back round?
It's going, she's going.
It's alright, tea time a minute, Wind's got it now. That's it, keep that together.
We're on this side, aren't we?
This side.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Jane wants to go
Yeah,
on.
that's right. Sorry.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a neighbour who doesn't want to be too sociable, so
Good morning and welcome to Tuesday the 28th of September. God, this month's going fast. Just got back from walking Misty, so I've got to have my tea and my toast and marmalade, and then I'm going to today I'm going to try and start and refurbish, for want of a better word, an anchor that I got off the U.S.A selling group last night. Paid £30 for it. I'm just going to lift you off here and just show you it. It's I don't even see it down here, look, it's a bit rusty. Chain, I'm going to lightly oil the chain, but I mean really lightly oil it, I think, and I'm just going to wire brush all the main parts of the anchor and give it a coat of paint, and then I'll store it in the engine bay out the way for now, because I don't need the anchor until I go out onto rivers. And while I'm storing that away, I want to have a look at the weed hatch, because I noticed we moved boats on Sunday, so I'm going to clip that video in just to show you. But when I moved the boat on Sunday, going forward was fine, but when in reverse there was a bit of a rattle, and I'm 99.9% sure it's the weed hatch cover. The base is rattling because there's a foam seal around the top, and chances are that's foam now. It's what's going to be 11-year-old, is gone weak, and it's just allowing a little bit of vibration. So I want to have a look at that. It's nothing major, it wasn't like dramatic, you'll hear it if you watch the video. And I have to thank Callum and Louise for coming down from their marina on Sunday to give me a hand, and also to give Jane, who's now more at the side of me in her wide beam, a hand. Anybody who has never sailed at all, and anybody who hasn't sailed a 34-ton wide beam on their own won't understand, but it is quite a scary thing to do until you get used to and get some experience, which at the moment, because I'm living in a marina and I'm working, I'm not going to get that experience until I can get out on the water. So not much longer now before I retire, and then my aim is to get myself out onto a stretch of water where I can moor up for a week and just constantly, for want of a better word, play. Just get used to, on a wide stretch of water, the speed at which she'll go, the speed at which she'll stop, how easy she is to turn, how to correct a wrong turn. I'm going to do all that on my own, out on the piece of open water, before I take my helmsman course, and then I'll get taught how to do it properly. But at least I know I've got a bit of experience. It's getting to know how your boat handles, I suppose. So I've got all that to learn. So yeah, today I'm going to make a start on this anchor. The paint I'm using is an external paint, silver paint, and it says it dries in 30 minutes. So with a little bit of luck, definitely by tomorrow it'll have had all its paint, but with a bit of luck, because it's warm in this pram area, I might even get it all done today. So I'll catch up with you, but I've got to have me tea and my toast, because I can't start the day without it. So catch up with you in a bit. Right, so this is the second-hand anchor that I've bought. As I say, it's cost me £30, which isn't a lot of money. I've removed the chain and shackle. I may just put it into a plastic box, wipe it down with a bit of oil, put it in the plastic box and refit it after I've painted this. But there's no rush because I'm not going out on the rivers for a while. And depending on cost, I may just decide, once this looks a little bit better, to add a new chain and a new shackle on there. But I'm going to set you up, and let's transform this from a rusty old anchor into something that looks a little bit nicer. So this is the chain that I've removed, and as you can see it's got quite a lot of surface rust on it, but then again it's just an old chain. So I'm debating at the moment. I might just get an oily rag and run the chain through it, just so it's got a bit of oil on it, not enough to make a mess, but just to keep it looking a bit fresher. Or I might just spend a bit and get a brand new chain. I'll let you know what my decision is nearer the time.
Oh.
Okay, so as I say, we're just going to get a couple of coats just to freshen it up a bit, so when I'm out on the river and it's sitting on the stern, sorry, the bow, it'll look neat and tidy. As I say, we're not looking for Picasso, so don't be too judgmental. Let's have a look what it's going to look like. Oh yeah, basically just a silvery aluminium metal paint. And I think once it's had a couple of coats of this on it, it'll look a lot smarter. So I'm not going to let you watch me paint every little bit, because that would be boring, a bit like watching paint dry. So I'm just going to put a thin coat on, as I do with all my painting. So a thin coat to start with, gives everything something to key on to, and I'll bring you back when I'm ready for putting coat number 2 on. I think it'll give you some idea what she's how it's transforming. So go and put the kettle on, get yourself a biscuit, and I'll come back to you in a bit. Right, well that's the first coat on, well, it's only a thin coat, but it's on the first side, so I've got to turn over and do the other side. But already it's almost, that side's touch dry. I did put a bit extra on this side, so I've just marked it, but it doesn't matter. But all the areas I've only put a very, very thin coat on is already touch dry. So I'm going to make myself a brew. I'm going to take my dog for a walk, and then when I get back I'm going to turn it over, first coat the other side, and I reckon this will be painted and finished today because it's so warm in here. It's drying really, really quick. Yeah, I reckon that was alright, that. It will be when it gets its next couple of coats on. Good morning, it's Wednesday the 29th of September, and I'm just about to put this anchor away in the engine room now. It's had several coats of paint, looks nice and fresh, and I won't be getting this out until I need to go out on the rivers. So I'm going to store it away, and I'm just going to get the chain out and have a look at that, and then just go through the basics of why we have an anchor and why it's so desperate that it's all ready to go when I'm out on a river. Paul. So that's the 3 windlasses and the anchor stored now under the deck in the engine room. And once I get out to go out on the river, obviously these will be brought out and put at hand. The anchor, the chain, etc. will be at the front, and the windlasses, I'm going to make some brackets so they'll fit on the back of the boat. I don't know if you can actually see it. No, you can't. There's a handrail that runs, you can see it on that side where the pram cover comes down onto that green bar. I'm going to put some wooden holding brackets to slot the windlasses in. I'm out of breath from carrying that chain. Right, let's get the coffee on, and then I'm going to talk to you about anchors. Right, well, part of this vlog was going to be me dealing with the weed hatch, which I think was giving me vibration noise when we moved the boat on Sunday. But I'm limited on time, and I have been busy with other jobs and projects, but so I'm concentrating mainly on the anchor. And I thought, whilst I've been busy painting it, lots of different thoughts have been going through my head, you know, and questions I thought you might want to ask. And obviously the first question is, why have I bought an anchor? Simple as that. Well, this anchor come off of the Mercer Marketplace advertising site. Chappers changed boats already got an anchor on it, and he put this up for sale with the chain for £30. I didn't bother bartering with him. I just thought that was fantastic, and he even delivered it to the end of the pontoon for me. And as you'll see in the photographs, which, if I do this right, you'll get to see a before and after, which I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to stop talking, show you the picture. So there you see the picture on the left was showing the anchor has arrived. Bit sad and sorry looking for itself, but most anchors spend their life locked in a cupboard, or not maybe locked in a cupboard, pushed in a cupboard on the front or the back of the boat, out of the way, and hopefully never get used. And I think that was the case with this one. So as you can see in the vlog, a bit of wire brushing, a few coats of paint, and total outlay £36. That includes the paint and the anchor, and I've still got, well, half a tin of paint left, so really £33 if you're being, you know, picky. And it looks a lot nicer. So why have I bought an anchor is not only because the price was right, because it did come complete with all the chain, is that eventually when I get to sail out of this marina and off the Trent and Mersey, I will be travelling on the River Trent and one or two other rivers around the northern part of the UK. And it's mainly on the rivers where you're really going to need this anchor. And again, only for an emergency. You're never going to use an anchor, well, I say never, hardly ever going to use an anchor on a canal. There's no current, it's safe, and to be fair, even if your boat was to suddenly drift off somewhere and you've lost all steering, etc., it ain't going to go very far on a canal. But on a river, obviously you've got a mass of water, you've got currents, you've got weirs, you've got flood water. So the anchor is an essential piece of kit. If you lose engine power, and like me, I'm going to be on my own, Freedom will then drift with the current. And yes, I could steer it to a degree, but it's not as efficient as when the propeller is pushing water past the rudder. So I would need to make sure that this is my home and it's not going to, you know, end up in the bottom of the Trent. So the anchor, when I'm out on the rivers, will be deployed at the front on the bow with chain and rope ready. And if I find that I'm in a situation where I feel that my boat is at risk or my life is at risk, then I will deploy the anchor. Now, there's two trains of thought on anchor location. I'm going to definitely make sure that when I start out on a river, the anchor is on the bow. There is a train of thought that say you should have it at the stern where you're steering because it's easier to get at. But the problem with that is, if you're on a fast flowing river and you've got the anchor at the back of the boat, and bearing in mind that the weight in your boat, the majority of the weight is at the rear, the back of your boat is already down in the water. Now, the problem you've got is, with Freedom, I've got a 720 litre diesel tank, and I've got a 75 horsepower Beat Marina engine, which weighs quite a lot of weight. Now, if I was to deploy an anchor from the back of the boat, what that would do, if I was sailing with the current, that would then hold the back of the boat, and the water, the current, would be pushing against the back of the boat, and there's always that risk that the back of the boat will drop in the water, and then you get water getting into the engine bay, which then adds weight on top of the engine and the fuel that's already in the boat. And it's possible, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it is possible that you could end up sinking your boat. By putting the anchor on the bow at the front of the boat, the worst case scenario is, once the anchor takes hold, your boat will turn. So now the bow of the boat is facing into the current. So it would be safer because you're at the higher end of your boat against the water, if that makes sense. So you've seen the anchor, you've seen the chain. Why do we have a chain? Why don't we just tie rope to it? Well, the chain does two major roles, really. First and foremost, it adds weight, because the anchor design is that it needs to get down onto the river bed, and the forks in the anchor will drag into the riverbed. The chain is adding weight, and there's about, at the moment, I think I've got about 45 feet of chain. And I will try and show you at some point in this video where the original owner of this anchor has joined two pieces of chain together. Now, I think I'm going to take the thinner length of chain off and replace that with a heavier section, maybe a little bit longer. There's a lot of debate about how long chains and ropes, or as they're technically called, warp, and that's the name of the rope that fastens to your chain, should be. And they say if it was, what a lot of people go is 3 to 4 times the depth of the water you're sailing in. Now that's a bit tricky, because if I'm in the middle of the River Trent in, say, out in the middle of nowhere, Newark way, I wouldn't know exactly how deep it is unless I started throwing a plumb line over the side. So better to err on the side of caution and have more than you need. Now they say that the Danethor anchor is more effective if you've got more distance between you and the anchor, and I think it says like it 10 times the water depth distance. So if the water was, for argument, I know it's not going to be, but let's just say it was 10 feet. If your anchor is 100 feet laid across the bottom with the warp and the chain, it's 100% efficient, and it goes down in degrees. So if you've only got half that length, it's only 50% efficient. That's my understanding. Now, I'm no anchor expert, and I'm sure people will be correcting me if I'm wrong. The other thing you need to bear in mind is to get the right warp, the right rope that you're going to fasten to that chain, because you need the proper anchor warp that got stretch in it but will also sink, because again it gives you a nice line from the anchor up to the boat. What you don't want is a chain laying on the bottom of the River Trent and then the rope going straight up and floating on the top of the water down to your boat, because again that means your anchor isn't efficient in its positioning. So if you're on a river and you've got to deploy that anchor, that's because it's an emergency. You've either lost power, or you're coming up against a weir which hasn't got the large rope and buoys across it to stop you going over, and you're being dragged towards that weir, and you haven't got enough engine power, which hopefully with 75 horses Freedom will have, but again you've got to allow for currents and pull of the weir. You need to chuck that anchor, and it'll hold you hopefully while rescue comes and gets you sorted. Be prepared to sacrifice your anchor, because often is the case that once it has been deployed and it's locked itself into that riverbed, you ain't going to get it back. There is a possibility if you was able to reverse backwards, you know, if you was able to pull the boat backwards, you could maybe dislodge the anchor and lift it back up. But my view is, for what it's cost me, even when I buy the warp to add to it, might be another £30–40, less than £100. Let it do its job. When it's done its job, leave it on the bottom of the Trent or whatever river you're on, and thank your lucky stars you're safe and your boats and your home's safe. Now, when you come to deploy it, people would expect, because Freedom's 34 ton, they'd expect me to have a great big massive anchor, and the anchor is quite heavy, but it's the chain that's heavy, seriously heavy. And that's for the reason I've already said, that it sinks then directly to the bottom of the river and holds the anchor flat to the surface of the base of the river. And you don't want an anchor that weighs so much that you can't pick it up in the first place, because then, you know, that would be pointless. You're not going to throw the anchor, you know, it's not a case, oh God, there's an emergency, pick the anchor up and throw it. You're going to lower it down over the side. So once that anchor hits the water, then the chain's going to come pulling out of the tub that it's in, and then the warp is going to follow the chain. The boat will be moving. The anchor will eventually find its own location on the riverbed, and once you know and you feel comfortable, you can tie off the rope, and hopefully then you're secured. So you haven't got to worry about picking up a really, really heavy anchor that's going to break your back just to throw it in the water, because you're just going to lower it in. I'm sure I can take advice, and I always will take advice on people on how to deploy an anchor, etc. And that's the reason I've been out and bought this anchor. So the only thing I've got to do now is get the warp. I'm going to change that little bit of chain into a heavier gauge and maybe a bit longer. So I'm going to aim to have about 60 foot of chain, And again, you're not going to pick the ball of chain up and throw it in. It's going to feed over the side, and so you don't have to worry about breaking your back picking up a ball of chain. It'll just feed over naturally. And I'm going to gear up for all that, so I've got containers where it'll feed straight out. The warp, as I say, might cost me £40–50. I don't know. I've still got to look into that for the type, although I know I'm not having nylon, and because you need to have that bit of stretch in it, and the length. But like I said, I think it's better to have more than you actually need than to be skimping, because I'm sure that when you're in an emergency situation, that's the last thing you want to be thinking, oh my God, I wish I'd had a bit more rope. So I'm just checking my notes to make sure I've covered what I wanted to tell you, which I think I have. I'm sure you're going to have some questions. Why have I painted it? Because when I go out on the water, it'll be on the front of my boat. I want it to look smart. I don't know whether I'm going to paint the chain. I don't think I am, because the first part of the chain, the heaviest part of the chain, is just pure aluminium linked, or galvanized should I say, linked. It's not aluminium. It's the thinner part that's rusty. Well, that I'm going to replace anyway, so the chain will look smart. It'll have a nice new rope on her, and I'm hoping that when I do my voyage to Liverpool and back, I don't find myself in a situation where I've got to be throwing it overboard, and it'll look just as nice when I get back as it did when I set off. But if I do have to sacrifice it, I will sacrifice it. So if you've got any questions on why and what and what for whatever about anchors, come back to me and I'll do a bit of research. And as I say, I'm no expert, and I'm not saying what I'm telling you is legitimate. It's how I see it. It's my interpretation of it, and hopefully it'll keep me safe, and it'll help you when you come to buy your anchor for your first boat. Don't skimp. You don't have to buy brand new anchors. You know, like me, I've bought a second-hand anchor. It's not going to be any detriment because it's, you know, it's a second-hand one. Save the money on the anchor. Spend it on the right amount of chain, the right weight and size of chain, and exactly the right warp and length of warp. Don't cut corners. It's your boat, it's your home, it's your life. You've got to stay safe. So I'm getting ready for a cider. Cider of the week. Well, that's my anchor sorted and stored away now till I need it, most likely beginning in the spring, summertime next year. So I'm ready for a cider, and this week we've got a new cider that I've never tried before called, it says on it, Angry Orchard Hard Cider. I didn't know you could have a soft cider, but this is a hard cider, so it must be tough. Picked this up at the Co-op in Willington, so I'm not sure who else sells it, but I'm sure if you went into a shop and asked for Angry Orchard Hard Cider, you'll get it. It's a 500ml bottle. It's 5%. It cost me £2. And this one does give a description. It says Angry Orchard Hard Cider, crisp apple, and then it says this crisp and refreshing cider mixes the sweetness of apples with a subtle dryness for a balanced cider taste. The fresh apple aroma and slightly sweet ripe apple flavour make this cider hard to resist. Now then, let's see if it is. So like I say every week, we're going to crack it open. We'll give it a sniff test, and more importantly, we'll give it a flavour test. So, here we go. Just says crisp apple original blend on it. So this, This smells more like I call a traditional cider, which you'd expect if it is just apple and not flavoured. Oh, that's nice. That is very, very nice. Where is it made? It says from Faversham in Kent. So, cider country, I suppose. Produced in the USA. Imported and bottled in Faversham. So it's actually come from the States. So it's a well-travelled cider. With all the apples we've got in Somerset, and we've got affected in from America. It's got a nice flavour to it. It's quite a proper cider flavour. It's not bitter. It's quite sweet, not over sweet. It's one of them ciders. I've said this before. There's certain ciders you could you could drink with a roast beef cooked dinner. You know what I'm saying? It's a refreshing, palatable cider. Some ciders, especially the ones that's the berries and the strawberries and the peach and all the rest of it, they, in my book, it is only my opinion, are what I call sociable ciders. The sort of ciders you'd have, you know, on a summer's evening at a barbecue with your friends or in the pub. But this is what I call a cider with a meal kind of cider. It's lovely. It's got no nasty aftertaste. It's just fresh, appley. Very, very deep flavour, and it's definitely one that I'd buy. I'd definitely buy this again. And I think that's, again, icy cold. Again, you most likely have it over ice, because you know, I keep telling you this, I just have it out of the ice box because I don't like to put the ice in it to weaken it. So I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, let's top it up a bit. Google, can you see that? The sun's catching it. Angry Orchard hard cider. I don't know why they call it hard cider, because I quite imagine that going to be a bit of a cider with a kick. But it's a very palatable cider, this. In fact, it's one of the nicest ones. Do you know, I reckon it's the first time ever. It's the first time I've had this is 5%. We've had a 6 and most of them are 4s. But I reckon this is a 9.5. This is almost as good as it's going to get, you know? And it's one of those that you need to go out, get a bottle, get it nice and cold, and you decide. Because I think you're going to like this one. This is a lovely cider. So this is, for me, I'm just going to have this drop. I'm going to take my dog out because it's getting to that time of night now. I need to take her out for a walk. I've lit the fire today, first time since May. And I'm going to put the rest of this bottle in the fridge with a lid on it. And I'm going to sit tonight after I've had my shower. And I'm going to drink this. And it just remains for me to say thank you to each and every one of you for subscribing and watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed talking about anchors. Sorry if you found it boring, but you know, it's one of them things. If you buy a boat and you're going to go on a river, you're going to need an anchor. So I'm just going to leave you with the words, cheers. Catch you next week.